All here, it appears, and wide-eyed and ready to go. And first thing on the agenda, Mr. Manager, I believe is your report.
First off, I'd like to welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I'd like to kind of introduce it, just to kind of show you what we got going on. I have the executive team up here, who, unlike last year and years past, will be an integral part of the budget workshop and have been, but will be an integral part of preparing the manager's budget up until we turn it in. Lindsay, of course, you know, and you want to introduce the new budget director?
Absolutely. I'm very pleased to introduce Lorian Showalter Airy, who is our new budget director. Today is her first day, so we're up here providing some moral support, but yes. Wish her well, and hopefully you will be kind to her.
Well, welcome, Lorian, and I'm glad I heard how to pronounce your last name. I kept looking at that and said, how do you say that? So now I know. But anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
And then you know the rest of the cast of characters, and also Lonnie's here, so to provide guidance and mentorship. And M&Ms if you need them. First, I have some bullets that I wanted to talk about real quick before we start on the presentations. So I want to address what I believe are some of the most important aspects of the 2018 budget. First and foremost for me, I think it's imperative that we have a balanced budget this year. This is a priority. Secondly, last year, as you know, we went through the strategic planning process. And now we do have our first strategic plan in almost 20 years. And that is going to also be an integral part of what you'll see as we go through the budgets this year. As part of that plan, elected officials and leaders in our organization, as you remember, we identified 4 priority areas: public safety, human services and cultural experiences, communications and engagement, and effective government organizations, all in which are represented by the managers and the communications department. Going through this budget process, these are the priorities we must keep in mind, and we must use these agreed upon focus areas to determine future requirements. All of this, organizing our budget around our goals, which are nested under the organization's strategic plan, positions the county for future success. It's essential that we focus our resources on the areas that we deemed as priorities for Sedgwick County. From the workshops so far, public safety continues to see increased demand, so there may be an increase in funding needed there, though most department budgets are flat again this year. But yet, while many department budgets are flat, there are many requests for additional funding associated with the increased cost of doing business, like utilities, medical services, and technology. In addition to increased costs to our day-to-day business, I've heard that many divisions have a common need for increased space. Any recommendations for CIP bonding this year would be targeted for specific projects if it comes to that, of course. Following the budget presentations, I look forward to your input about the best way to balance the increased demand for county services with our available resources, and then I will do my best to deliver a recommended 2017 budget in July that fulfills your goals for Sedgwick County. And with that, without further ado,
All right, Commissioners. So this discussion today, this presentation, really sets the stage for our ongoing 2018 budget development as we move into truly the heart of budget season between now and August 2nd when you adopt your 2018 budget. So at your seats, you should have a copy of this presentation along with this sheet, which we call the long sheet. There's a couple tweaks, and we'll go through that as we move through the presentation. So before we get too far into the presentation, of course, there is a difference between the forecast and the budget. The financial forecast itself is simply a planning tool that illustrates what we really believe will happen with our revenues and expenses based on the best available information we have now. Whereas the budget is just a 1-year spending limit, and it is set essentially based on state law, deadlines, and requirements. And so what I'm going to present to you now is the forecast, but of course this will shape your decisions as we move into the budget process. So again, the purpose of the forecast is to estimate actual future outcomes on best available information and reasonable assumptions. And reasonable people can disagree, and we will, and that's why we'll show you multiple scenarios as we move through the process over the next month and a half. We do this so that we can identify potential future problems early, so that you can take proactive action to correct for those challenges before they actually occur. And of course, as the manager alluded to, we have a lot of decision packages or requests for additional funding that you'll be hearing about. And so at least from a financial perspective, it will provide some context as to whether or not those new programs, services, or expansion of services are possible. So then, moving to the long sheet itself, I just want to walk through quickly what you have. As in past years, it's intended to detail some of the key components of the forecast. We do have one new feature with this long sheet, and that is the second column that you see, which says 2016 actuals. What that does is it provides information for you, essentially the baseline from which all of these numbers are calculated. So when you look at, for example, retail taxes in row 4, and you see that last year we brought in $28.7 million, that will give you some context for those percentage increases in the outer years. Those are year-over-year changes. So it's those, for example, 2018 is not intended to reflect growth over 2016. It would instead reflect the growth over the 2017 number if you were to apply that compounding rate. And so if you were to want something that detailed, we would be happy to provide it. So the top of this form outlines our key revenue assumptions. The second section of the form outlines our key expenditure assumptions. The middle section outlines our operating income or deficit by fund, really the bottom line. Do we have a surplus or a deficit, and to what extent is a deficit acceptable? Then you'll see our ending fund balance. Again, only our general fund has a minimum fund balance requirement. That's 20% of adopted expenditures, and so that's what's reflected there in row 48. In the next section, mill levy rates, you'll see that for 2016 and 2017, where we have those real rates, those rates are reflected. Otherwise, the outer years continue to show the goal of 29.359 mills, which was in the resolution you all adopted last year. And then at the bottom, you'll see what is currently included in the 2017 adopted budget. Obviously, we'll have discussion as we go through these hearings about what CIP should look like, but for now, this is the most recent action that's been taken by the board, and so that's what we've included in the forecast. And so we will talk through each of these individual components now, but I just wanted to orient you to that form. So for 2018, our selected revenue assumptions to call out here include obviously an assessed value increase of 2.6%, which would equate to additional revenue of about $1.9 million next year. We will have estimated values by June 15th, a couple weeks earlier than usual, that we'll use to actually craft the final recommended budget that comes to you. Commissioner Howell had asked during our quarterly presentation about some analysis on mortgage registration and officer fees, the per page fees. We'll get to that on the next slide, but this simply calls out a couple of those numbers. We do estimate that from 2017 to 2018, we will have reduced revenue from mortgage registration fees of $1.5 million as that phase out continues. We do expect that our per page filing fees will increase and offset that reduction by about $300,000. We're projecting an increase in our retail sales taxes of 2%, even taking into account the NCAA tournament that will be here next year. That will give us roughly $600,000 in additional revenue next year. We project continued slow, modest growth in our motor vehicle tax collections, which would generate an additional $600,000. We continue to plan for an increase in transports and therefore an increase in revenues collected for medical charges for service, which would equate to about $500,000. And finally, though it's not one of the typical key revenues we call out, we do know that in 2017, the county is the managing partner for MABCD. And so if you look on your long sheet in row 10, you'll see that in 2017, we estimate increased MABCD revenues of 115% over our collections of about $3.8 million last year. And again, that's because the county is now receiving 100% of that revenue. Now in turn, you'll see an expense assumption that shows that we pay a significant portion of that out. But in 2017, we did receive a final payment from the city of Wichita from last calendar year. We expect that that revenue will go away, so that's why you'll see a decrease in the 2018 column for this revenue next year. So then, like I said, we would dig into the mortgage registration fees and per page recording fees a little bit. That's what this slide shows you. We have 5 years of actuals shown here. So 2012 through 2016, how much we brought in just in the mortgage registration fee itself, along with what we call officer fees in our system, or per page filing fees. We know that as the legislature began that phase out over time, and that rate is shown in the first column, we know that they also increased per page fees in each year of that phase out. And so you can see that that revenue comes in at a much higher rate than what it had previously. And then because of the way the law changed with the way Heritage Trust Fund money is collected and distributed, the county started tracking that in a slightly different way, and so that's why you can see it called out on this slide. Altogether, what you can see is that in 2012, we collected about $8.5 million from this particular revenue stream. By the end of the forecast, we expect to generate about $3.8 million from this revenue stream, for a net loss of about $4.7 million by the end of the life of the forecast. Any questions about that in particular before I move on? I promise that's the most detailed slide you'll see from me today. Okay, moving to our next slide then. We'll move to expense assumptions. So just like at the retreat, we continue to show a 5% employee pay adjustment in the financial forecast, which would be equivalent to about $5.6 million in 2018. That cost would compound into the future years. We have the employer portion of health insurance. We are working with HR now to find out if this is the right assumption to use, that 5% growth. We should have that answer by the time we come back to you for the recommended budget. But for now, that's worth about $1 million on a recurring basis. We know that in 2018 we will have a gubernatorial election, and we estimate increased costs for that alone at $200,000. Just like at the retreat and even last year, we've talked about radio replacements as our mobile and portable radios go end of life in the next few years. So we've got about $4.1 million in cash currently included in the forecast in the outer years, and that is detailed on your long sheet as well in row 32. And then we have cash for capital projects, and again, this corresponds to the sheet that's the long sheet that's in front of you. Right now, we have about $2 million in facilities and drainage projects, and road and bridge would be about $13.3 million. So then, moving to our selected increased costs of doing business for retirement contributions, we have heard from CAPERS and KPNF most specifically that based on actuarial valuations and the assumption they're using in terms of interest, we expect big jumps in our retirement contributions the next 2 years. So we expect that in 2018, those costs will cost us about $600,000 on a recurring basis. For software and hardware maintenance, we do assume that, at least in this current version of the forecast, that our tax system maintenance costs, which have been paid for out of our technology fund, would come back into the general fund. We know, however, that Tanya Buckingham, the Register of Deeds, came and presented $300,000 of that transfer to you all, and so this likely will have an impact when we come to the recommended budget, which will decrease that percent change. Utilities, we know, continue to go up about 5%. It's a number we've heard before, and that costs about $200,000. For inmate medical, those costs continue to increase, and I'm sure you'll hear the sheriff talk about that when he comes and speaks about his presentation. But that's about $200,000 anticipated per year. And we are starting to see an uptick in our fleet charges after a couple years of pretty low rates, and so we expect that will increase about 3.3% next year and $200,000. So then moving into expense assumptions for the rest of the forecast, we have a 2.5% pay pool assumed in each year. We assume a 5% increase in the employer portion of health insurance costs each year. We do know that we have 2020 presidential and 2022 gubernatorial elections coming up, and so we have planned for that in the forecast. We do have the current adopted CIP. And then, of course, we have some additional uses of general fund cash. These are pretty close to what you saw at your retreat in February. $3 million for a 911 CAD system, $1 million each year. We may have some opportunities for creative ideas there, but we'll get to that through the recommended budget process. We've talked about the radios. We plan in 2021 to do a major upgrade to our SAP financial and HR transactional system. That would cost $1.7 million. And then because when you adopted the CIP last year, we didn't have 2022 in that 5-year CIP, we have put in a placeholder of $2 million for that final year. So what does all of that mean? This shows you revenues and expenses in our county property tax supported funds for the life of the forecast. And so what you can see, the red line is revenues, blue line is expenses. We do expect that our blue line will be higher than our red line. So deficits in those years into the future, although then you'll see in 2021, we do expect to have a modest surplus. And that's shown more clearly on this slide here. We're used to looking at this. At your February retreat, you saw the gray line. So we've actually improved a little bit. Since then, we've increased our revenue estimates for mortgage registration fees, and we've actually had a slight decrease in what we thought our personnel costs would be, largely in part to the sheriff doing some overtime management. And so that has improved our outlook for each year because those are recurring activities. What we're focused on right now is for 2017 that we have, for 2018, we have a projected deficit of $5.8 million. But again, that's based on some of the assumptions we've already seen with CIP and with pay pools and those kinds of things that we'll have more discussion about as we move through this process. So again, the general fund is the only fund with an estimated minimum balance requirement of 20%. This slide depicts what our estimated ending balances are each year, along with what that estimated minimum balance would be. And so because of those improvements we talked about, you will see that at no point in the current forecast do we believe that we'll fall below that minimum balance requirement. So then moving into some of our other funds, our EMS fund right now, we have a target of about $1 million. And you can see that this forecast intends to build that fund back up to $1 million after a pretty significant dip this year, and then maintain around that level. The highway fund has a targeted fund balance of $500,000 for right now, and so you can see how that looks over the life of the forecast. Within aging and ComCare, each of those funds has a target currently of $200,000. Again, this is generally based on the, we formerly had a fund balance policy that said about 7%, and so that's generally what we're taking into account here, but there will need to be long-term discussion with you all about your expectations for those balances, because once they're depleted to that certain amount, then there's no additional capacity to dip into those. And so that will be something that will be kind of a long-term project for us to approach with you about potentially another policy or some discussion of how we use that fund balance. Noxious weeds has a target of about $100,000, again because it's a fairly small fund. Bond and interest, we want to have that around $500,000, and so that's what this shows. You can see a pretty significant dip in 2019 as a result of that one-time redemption that we had talked about earlier this year. So when we take all of that together, these are our cumulative fund balances. You can see that the lowest balance projected is $52.7 million in 2020. So as we move into BoCC budget reviews and you hear about flat budgets and you hear about ideas for additional funding for decision packages, this is just intended to give you some context. And as we hear about your priorities and goals, we'll incorporate those. What you will see over the next 2 weeks from divisions is definitely not the recommended budget. At this point, the purpose is just to provide you information on what folks have requested, to talk about what the impact is of those requests, and to discuss what they perceive as the most pressing issues. So the budget information you have in that big binder in front of you does not include yet any increases for pay, any increases for health insurance, and none of the costs of doing business are included in the budget yet. We have it in the forecast. We haven't yet included it in the budget. That will be part of the ongoing discussion for recommended budget. Fleet charges and administrative charges continue to be in at the 2017 budgeted levels. We'll update those as we move through the process as well before we get to the recommended. And it's really important to note that at this point, we don't have any cash-funded capital improvement projects included in the 2018 budget. And that's because we'll be working through the process to understand what your priorities are along with the managers before we include those in any documents. So what you'll hear about is a total budget request worth $414.3 million. You'll hear about nearly $7 million in requests for additional funding for different activities, from public safety to general government to human services. You'll hear about divisions' ideas to generate additional revenue of about $24,000. And we'll talk about some ways to potentially reduce the budget through alternative reduction proposals totaling nearly $1 million. And each division will be responsible for outlining those for you when they come to talk with you. So we start your budget discussions today. June 21st is our county manager's drop dead day for decisions in the recommended budget so that we can get it to print and get it distributed to you in time for the presentation on July 12th. Also, the day that we present the recommended, we'll have the last update discussions for both the county and fire. And just as a reminder, that's when you tell citizens what the maximum spending and the maximum tax levy is that you might include in your recommended budget. And after that date, we can't increase those without going through the process all over again. And then we'll publish that. July 19th is your regular Wednesday meeting, and we'll have your first public hearing on both the county and fire budgets then. We do have a scheduled evening public hearing on Monday, July 31st, with budget adoption scheduled, of course, for Wednesday, August 2nd. Folks can follow the process by going to the website. We will have the online public hearing option again, and then, of course, we'll have the public hearings we just talked about. Briefly, to go through your budget review materials, you will find in that document a table of contents that outlines for you all of the budget requests that will be before you today. There are calendars included, not just for your reviews, but also for all of the key dates coming up in the process between now and August. There's a section called Budget Summaries that at a very high level outlines the totals by fund, outlines the total by department, includes FTEs. It includes all of the decision packages, alternative reductions at a very high level, and so that's a quick and easy way to get a feel for what's going on with the division requests that are coming to you this week. And then finally, near the back of your book, we've structured it a little differently. Last year, you had a second volume. The year before that, we packaged decision packages with individual division pages at the beginning of the book. This year, we've packaged them all at the end. So we'll ask divisions as they work through their presentations to point you to those pages. And so if you have need for additional information or details, that would be a great place to look, although we're obviously happy to answer any questions about that. And so with that, I have concluded my presentation. Are there any questions about the forecast, the book, or anything else?
I don't see any questions.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
With that, I will turn it over to Lorian.
Commissioners, we're ready for our first division presentation. We'll be starting with MAPD. It'll be on page 112 of your binders.
All right.
Mr. Dale Miller will be presenting, and turn it over to him once he gets up here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
afternoon,
I'm going to
Dale.
turn it over to Scott Knable. He's worked on the budget and knows the details more intimately than I do, but just wanted to introduce Scott in case you didn't know who he was. But
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Scott Knable, as Dale mentioned, with
Not
Metropolitan
yet, one
Area
more
Planning
copy.
Department. Yes, I do. Sorry
We
about
don't have
that.
enough for.
There's got one there. Oops. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, okay. The Metropolitan Area Planning Department is in the safe and secure communities priority. Our mission statement, as you can see on the screen, is to provide consolidated city-county professional planning services to the community regarding land use, community facilities, and infrastructure. We have 8 activities or services that we provide, and I'll go through each of those in a little bit of detail for you. The first of which is zoning. In it, we have mission statements or goals, if you will, for each of these 8 services that we provide. With zoning, we're attempting to promote economic growth through timely processing of applications and through assisting developers with planning processes. We do the same thing with subdivision, which is similar to zoning. Subdivision is often combined with zoning in the development of a project. The subdivision has to do with dividing a property into multiple buildable lots. The comprehensive plan is what provides the overall guidance for zoning, and subdivision is a longer-term view, but also establishes the governing body's policies for how zoning and subdivision applications are reviewed. We monitor that to make sure that the intended economic growth is being accomplished, and we bring forward proposed amendments through the Planning Commission if the targets, if you will, or the word is escaping me, but the plan has a number of goals in it with milestones or targets that we're trying to hit. We're actually about to present the first or the 2016 report to the Planning Commission, and there are a number of things where the economic growth has not reached what we thought it would. So we'll have that discussion. Customer service is essentially running a customer service center in the Ronald Reagan Building in conjunction with the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department. We have available at all times, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, all regular business days, a professional planner on duty. We call them the planner on duty to answer questions for people. We also have an online presence. Of course, take telephone calls, emails, those sorts of things for anybody who is interested in planning processes. We have an administrative function, which is primarily just the management of financing and human resources of the department, and making sure that all of our processes are up to date and timely. And then we have 3 kind of specialty functions that we provide: downtown and neighborhood planning. We develop and implement and monitor plans for areas in the downtown and around downtown. We have a historic preservation board that reviews requests for permits on historic landmarks and in historic districts, and make sure that the historic preservation requirements are met as part of those permitting. And then we do a very small piece, which is actually funded primarily with grant funding from the Federal Transit Administration, in providing information, primarily demographic and other types of information, to Wichita Transit, so that their routes match growth that's occurring in the community and those sorts of activities. You can see our budget request is $646,000 roughly. That's an equal amount to what the City of Wichita will be funding for the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. That's determined by an interlocal agreement that was recently amended for our department. The other piece, which I'll get to in a second, We also have, as I mentioned previously, the grant funding for transit, and then we also charge fees for services, which provides the rest of our overall budget. You can see from the county standpoint, this is a contractual payment that's made to the City of Wichita on a quarterly basis, and then at the end of the year, the funds that are expended are totaled up, and anything that was not spent is split 50-50 and sent back to the county and to the city. The development application fees, you can see we collect almost $250,000 a year in application fees. That's about actually 1/3 of the cost of the cases that those application fees go to, and that rounds out our budget. So with that, I'll answer any questions, and of course Dale is here to answer them as well.
Scott, we do have a question. Commissioner Ranzau.
Yes, Scott, can you provide a detailed budget for MAPD next year that shows down the breakdown of everything so I can see where the increase is going to?
Okay, in terms of the increased cost, sure.
Right, and yeah, I mean, you'll have whatever.
Right, it's salaries and benefits.
Okay, I'd like to see that also by function.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Scott, don't see anything.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Dale, thank you.
Commissioners, we are scheduled for a break after this presentation. We're running quite a bit ahead. It'd be okay, we could take a short break and get the Register of Deeds up here for her presentation.
Okay,
Take about 15 minutes.
we're breaking now.
We probably don't need 15 minutes, do we?
Pardon me?
We don't
I'd
need
say
15 minutes.
10, if that, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Ready to go.
Change in trend. It goes down, 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 then back up. And I'm looking at the chart, and I see those numbers on the chart, but I'm trying to figure out what are the significant changes on the chart that's causing such a change in trajectory on page 11.
Okay. Well, I think probably the first thing that's easiest to point to is going to be rows 32 and row 35, because those two together are the primary uses of cash to fund one-time expenses. So you've got radios, and then you've also got CIP. And so when you take those two things together and add them up, you get a pretty significant chunk of change that way. The other part to bear in mind is that for personnel, every time we have 1% pay increase in our property tax supported funds, when we take into account salaries and wages and labor taxes and overtime and all of that, it equates to about $1.1 million. And so in each year of the forecast where we are doing those types of pay adjustments, that's kind of the figure that you would want to play into that. At the same time, we have our expenses increasing. You did see that our revenues are going to incrementally decrease as that mortgage registration fee phases out and our officer fees even out a bit. And so when you take all of those things into account, and then the slow, modest growth in our assessed value and those types of things, that together is what drives it. You also have some election cycle costs that are not cheap. $200,000 in a year in which we have a gubernatorial, and $400,000 to $500,000 in a year in which we have a presidential. And so those are things to take into account every other year as well.
Is there any impact based on the fact, I think Exploration Place bonds end about that time? Is that part of this as well?
It would, with regard to bond and interest, you'll see that we have the debt service going across line 29. And so every year that those dollars increase, that's obviously savings, but then that's being picked up in other funds because we are continuing to aim for that 29.359 mils. So even as our property taxes stay flat and our debt service goes down, those costs are being picked up in the other funds to pay for those ongoing expenses.
Okay, well, I'll have to study this for a while and appreciate the answer. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks.
All right. And Tanya's here. Yay, the hero.
Hey, Lorian, what page?
We'll be on page 44, Register of Deeds.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, and what do I hit? What button? Like this right now?
Space bar.
Space bar?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, sure. Move the microphone. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tanya Buckingham, Register Deeds. I'm going to start off with the budget. First of all, I want to explain my voice is back. It was not here this morning, so working on.
Great.
Okay, great. Okay. So the very first page is the mission for the Register Deeds. This is a new mission that we wrote up this year because we felt like it needed to be updated. The mission is to preserve the accuracy and integrity of the public land records for Sedgwick County so that the public and the businesses who do work with these records can obtain accurate and timely information as efficiently as possible, thus securing property ownership involving real estate with confidence now and in the future. The 2018 request includes funding for services in the property tax funds. The first and most important thing that we do is we record all the real estate documents to make available to the public to provide the quality public service. We also, our second priority that is most important in the Register of Deeds is to preserve the documents forever so that those property records will be available to the public and now and in the past and the future. We take our customer service very seriously. We've been collaborating with local title companies, banks, and attorneys and trying to look for ways to provide the best customer service. We've implemented a customer service survey on our emails and on our website just to see what we can do to improve our service to the citizens. This year, we did return a portion of the technology fund back to the county. That was $300,000 this year, and we've done money in the past too, but this year we felt like that money should go to the county that we didn't earmark for anything. The Register of Deeds budget request for 2018 is $1,094,658. The next slide shows the contractuals and commodities. We have no revenue decision package or alternate reduction packages. That's the end of the PowerPoint. Do you have any questions? It's kind of short and to the point.
Yeah, well, right to the point. That's very good. No, Commissioners, here, question from Commissioner Ransall.
Yeah, no, how are you able to reduce your personnel costs?
Lindsay? Usually we have money left. We return money back in personnel because we have a program where we hire people in at the RLD 1, and you can move up to the RLD 2, 3, and 4. So it could be a matter of that position was funded at a lower or higher position. That's probably how I would explain it. But Lindsay, do you have another explanation?
There is additional explanation.
Okay.
And actually this will be the case in many of the presentations you see. In this year, in 2017, we did the compression adjustments, and so folks didn't have that funding built into their budgets at the beginning of the year. We had to do budget transfers based on what we believed would be the case for overtime and for salary adjustments that the folks who were in that position earlier this year would get. And so in some cases, folks have probably more budget authority in 2017 than they need. The 2018 request is based on those individuals' actual new salaries and the associated labor taxes. And so 2018 is built on a position level, whereas your 2017 is based on a combination of positions and whatever we thought they probably would need through compression adjustments. And so it's likely that what we'll see is just some significant personnel savings in 2017.
And I noticed now this is the revised 2017, not the budgeted.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to, I think I already know the answer to the question, but I'd like to go ahead and ask anyway.
Sure.
We just had a little bit of a discussion about the per page filing fees and all of that and how that's going down. I expected to see some impact on this particular budget because of that change, but I'm not seeing, everything looks pretty static on this budget request, pretty flat, so I'm just curious, those law changes are impacting county government only, but not the Register of Deeds office, I assume, or can you please explain?
Well, it is affecting, it is going down a little bit, but I know at one time we talked about the per page fee, and we thought that people would not be recording as many pages, but I'm not seeing that. I see like right now, so far this year compared to last year, there's a 4% decrease or increase in, no, it's, let's see, let me look at my pages. Yeah, there's a 4% decrease in the number of pages this year versus last year. So, but I have met with finance, with Lindsay on the numbers, and what we have in the Register of Deeds concurs with what they have. So we have been meeting on that with the recording fee and the mortgage reg fee.
Okay, that
So,
makes sense.
I guess, Commissioner, are you talking about the revenues, or are you talking about the expense side of the ledger?
Okay, that you got me. I was thinking about the revenue side, so,
Okay.
yeah. She's talking about the expense side. Never mind.
Yeah.
All right, that helps.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Any other questions? I don't see any, so
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Well, we are in a very enviable position here of essentially running way ahead of schedule. So we will be trying to reach folks to get here, either Linda or Ellen House, whoever can get here first.
Okay.
My apologies, Commissioners. Instead of 15 minutes, we'll do 5 minutes next year.
Are you coming to do this? Huh? Were you coming to?
Yes, I was coming to Linda's. But no, feel free. I would rather you do it than me. Commissioner Howell, to your point, if it's okay, well, we've got a couple minutes, I can maybe explain in more detail. We have a system that allows us to do revenue and expense forecasts at the most detailed level we possibly can. And so I have that sheet helpfully printed out for me, but what might be helpful would be to walk through some of the information.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Okay, so for personnel, for example, in 2017, we plan to spend about $132.7 million. But because of the pay pools we've talked about, the retirement contribution is going up, and the health insurance increases that we've talked about, while we spent $132.7 million in 2017, we are projected to spend $157 million in 2022 because of those combination of factors. And so when you take all of that into account, that's a roughly $25 million increase in personnel costs over 6 years. And so that alone will eat into a significant portion of whatever revenue growth we've got. And then we have the specific expenditures outlined for the CIP. And you can see that at least in those couple of years where we have the radio replacements, we also have some pretty high amounts for CIP that then decline in the outer years. And so when you take those two together, that's what results in those larger deficits. But then we come back into balance, and we actually find that we have a surplus by the end of the planning period.
All right.
Does that make does
Yeah,
that help?
during the budget retreat, there was some discussion about deficit spending.
Yes.
So this is the proposed budget at the moment. So
Not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's the proposed
Not
budget.
proposed.
It's if nothing happens
Okay.
to intervene, that would be what we would expect. And so that's kind of the task I think that we have been given from you all, and that the manager has been given, is to figure out how to have a balanced budget. And really we interpret that to mean a balanced forecast, so that you don't see deficits like that in the outer years. And so that will be our goal, and that's hopefully what you'll hear about in a month and a half.
okay, good answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me talk about that. We have
District Court's coming. She's grabbing.
Sounds like they're on their way down to the district court. Commissioners, will be on page 269 behind the public safety tab, and they do have 3 decision packages, which will be towards the end of your binder, starting on page 593.
What was the first page number, Maureen?
269.
have some good stories.
I'm sure you do.
Skip to the treasurer. Linda Kazire is here. I prefer coming down early. So we'll be back on page 112 under general government.
112.
Or 104, sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll let all the papers get passed out first. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Linda Kazire, your County Treasurer. Sorry I'm an hour early, but I guess that way you don't have to see me that later, much later in the day. Our Treasurer's Tax Office, of course, our mission statement is to provide honest, friendly service while being accountable to the citizens of Sedgwick County through timely collection and distribution of public funds in accordance with legislative mandates. So today we're going to talk about the Tax Department 110 General Fund. As you're well aware, we were responsible for the billing, collection, and distribution of real estate, personal property, motor vehicle taxes, commercial motor vehicle taxes, special assessments, and other miscellaneous taxes, which include the fire district, of course, counties, cities, townships, school districts, cemetery districts, library districts, all the taxing jurisdictions. We do our day-to-day collection work and distribution work by internal clerks and accountants. Other internal work includes some of our bills are created by the county print shop, but the majority of our billing is done by an outside vendor because it saved costs for the print shop as well as for the county to outsource it. It really reduced our budget by around $25,000 when we outsourced that. As you can see, our budget department recommendation, we have 17.5 full-time employees. About 88% of our budget does go for personnel expenditures. Our contractuals is about 5.41, and our commodities, which is our printing, postage, and office supplies, is about 6.85%. We're not asking for any additional funding. Actually, we've reduced it by just a little bit from 2017 to 2018. And here's an actual breakdown of our requests from personnel to contractuals to commodities. No decision package was requested, no alternative package, and no revenue package request. Other than since we had to make 20 copies of this, I think you guys need to pay us for these. No, you know, I'm kidding. Richard, I'm going to try to make you laugh, Richard. Come on. So I got him to grin, though.
You got to wake us up.
And that's it. Questions?
Okay.
I've always got to get
Commissioner
Richard to
Howell.
smile and laugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at, I guess, slide 4, the 17.5 FTEs.
Uh-huh.
Is that somewhere on the page 105? I'm looking for that number. I see the 1.269 million. Personnel on the sheet here shows, I'm seeing this right, 80 FTE and 17 going to 90 FTE. And I'm sorry, going from 80 to 93 from adopted, revised, and then holding level. I don't understand the FTE difference in the PowerPoint versus the sheet in front of me.
Commissioner Hall, if you look on page 105,
Yeah.
the third section down shows the FTEs, and that top line is property tax funded, and that's 17.5.
Oh, I see. Okay, 17.5 is the property tax funded,
Yes.
but there are 93 people. Okay, that makes more sense. All right, thank you. That helps.
Oh, thanks.
Appreciate that.
I don't see anyone asking to speak, Madam Treasurer, so great job.
Oh, great. Thanks. But that was quick. Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to go to the district court, back to page 269 with their decision packages on page 593. I believe Ellen House will be speaking. And Judge Fleetwood is also here. So we'll turn it over to them.
I like the bow tie. Very dapper.
Commissioners, once again, I'm grateful to have an opportunity to come here and speak to all of you. I appreciate the input that we received from you, as well as your openness to the discussions concerning the requirements of the court as the court changes and grows. We are adding more detail to this presentation than we might normally, simply because we have two new commissioners who have not been through the process before, to try to educate you. If there are questions, please feel free to ask. Ellen and I have gone to great lengths to try to develop a presentation that will give you all the information you need for your decision-making process. We are asking for more money this year, but that is it's not a matter of any enhancements. There are no enhancements included in this budget. This is simply a matter because the costs in appointment of counsel has increased. The costs in use of required interpreters has increased, and there are increases in filings also. The court's getting busier. And so in addressing all of those, we tried to limit the court to what its statutory and constitutional requirements are, rather than seeking enhancements in our budgets. We are also making efforts now, as the statewide court's making an effort to enhance more and more of its processes, or not enhance, excuse me, to unify its processes with e-filing, e-management, and e-documents. The court here locally is trying to address those and bring us into compliance with what's happening statewide. So, with that said, that brief introduction, I'm going to turn some time now over to Ellen for her to present the details of our budget, and then if there are questions afterwards, we'll stand for those questions. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ellen House, Administrator for the 18th Judicial District Court System. Today, I would like to talk with you about our budget requests for 2018. The 18th Judicial District is dedicated to the administration of justice in a fair, impartial, and timely manner in accordance with the rule of law. Included in today's presentation, we'll talk about the district court, which includes administration, court services, court clerk, our information technology department, drug testing, parenting classes, and our alcohol and drug safety action plan, as well as the Office of the Court Trustee, both the Title 4D side and the non-4D side. The Kansas District Courts, or the trial courts in Kansas, were created by the Kansas Constitution, and the district courts have general jurisdiction over all civil and criminal cases and provide a variety of services to many people in many ways, such as a right to a fair trial for those accused in both adult and juvenile felonies, misdemeanors, and also the appellate jurisdiction for municipal courts, divorce and domestic relations, civil disputes including small claims, probate and the administration of estates, guardianships, and conservatorships, cases involving the care of the mentally ill, child in need of care matters, protection from abuse and protection from stalking cases. We issue marriage licenses, and we also formalize adoptions. Kansas is divided into 31 judicial districts with a district judge in each county. The 18th Judicial District is comprised solely of Sedgwick County, and we have 28 judges, 2 administrative hearing officers, and 1 full-time equivalent judge pro tem. Since we are part of the state judiciary system, you might be wondering why we are here before you today. And that is because of Kansas Statute 20-348, which states that county commissioners are responsible for certain operating expenses of the district courts. The first budget we'll look at is the administration budget, and it covers the majority of the constitutional and statutorily required expenses, as well as providing office supplies, training, travel, equipment, chairs, furniture, that sort of thing for the judges, their administrative aides, court reporters, and then the court administrator staff. Some of the major expenses in this area are jury fees. Each year, approximately 5,000 qualified residents of the 18th Judicial District serve on jury panels, and they're paid at $12 a day plus mileage for a total expense of approximately $275,000 per year. We also pay interpreter fees. They cover both foreign language interpreters and sign language interpreters, and more than 225 court clients each month require an interpreter for an annual cost of approximately $120,000. We pay transcript fees for indigent defendants, and that's a result of an expense of over $70,000. Since the courthouse does not house the local law library, we pay $5,000 to the law library for that expense. We also pay for defense witness fees, although that line item is seldom used. And then our largest expense is our indigent and defense fees. The state's required to furnish counsel to all indigent defendants charged in Kansas courts with felonies, and the district court furnishes counsel to certain defendants charged with misdemeanors, certain habeas corpus petitioners, prisoners in probation revocation proceedings, and juvenile offenders, both felony and misdemeanor, in proceedings which may lead to a commitment in an institution. We also pay for court-appointed counsel in child in need of care cases and appointed counsel in mental health cases. And these services result in expenses upward of $1.6 million per year. The second area we'll discuss is court services. Our court services officers provide services to clients that have been convicted of a crime and sentenced to adult probation, child in need of care, and also juvenile probation. We have 4 adult probation intake CSOs that process over 2,100 clients each year, and then 20 adult probation officers that supervise those clients. We have 7 officers who do nothing but prepare pre-sentence investigations, and that's between 2,000 and 2,500 each year. We have 2 child custody investigators who prepare over 120 child custody investigations. We have 10 officers each in both juvenile offender and juvenile sync cases. They supervise over 350 juveniles, write over 500 PSI reports, and they also meet with service agencies and coordinate over 500 cases annually. We also have 3 traffic CSOs who supervise over 600 clients annually. Our next area is the clerk of the court. This is a ministerial function, statutorily required, and their main duty is to file and carefully preserve the papers delivered to the clerk for the purpose in every action or special proceeding. We have 95 deputy clerks in our district, and here are some of their statistics. They receive and file over 65,000 cases each year. They process over 600 appeals to the Kansas Court of Appeals and Kansas Supreme Court. They scan and code over 800,000 documents, respond to more than 50,000 records requests, issue approximately 3,500 marriage licenses, issue and process more than 22,000 garnishments, and over 12,500 income withholding orders. They assist over 7,500 members of the public that are summoned for jury duty, and they answer over 100,000 phone calls in the district court call center. They are very, very busy employees. Our next department, I'm not sure what's happening. Help! Okay, thank you. Is our district court information and technology department. Obviously, I have never worked for them. The district court does manage our own IT department, and we interface with the Kansas Supreme Court, the Office of Judicial Administration, the district attorney, the sheriff, county DIO, and the city of Wichita. We have 8 staff, and they support over 20 servers and 31 courtrooms in 2 locations, and 24 of those courtrooms have audio recording equipment, and 20 of them have video projectors. We have over 300 users in 3 locations, over 600 networked laptops and desktop computers, and over 250 printers, 385 networked phones, and 10 centralized high-volume scanners. Next is our drug testing program. This started out as a very small $1,500 grant back in 1992 and has grown to be a 100% self-sufficient testing program. Our court service officers provide random testing of their clients or sync parents at the time of reporting or upon the request of a judge. We do over 5,000 drug tests annually, and the clients are required to pay between $5 and $20 for the test. And we do this because judges are able to make better informed decisions based on those immediate results. We have parenting classes that are statutorily required, and we use the program called Solid Growth. We have approximately 2,000 parents each year that pay $60 each to attend this class, and it's held in our jury room on Thursday evenings. Then finally, under the district court umbrella, is our Alcohol and Drug Safety Action Program. Now, this is a non-taxed fund, and it is set up by statute. Everyone that is convicted of or goes on to diversion for a DUI case is assessed a fee, and until 2013 that fee was paid into district court, and then we dispersed that to the providers. After 2013, the convicted people pay that fee directly to the provider. However, we still need to have a fund open to receive revenue and disperse cases that payments are made for the pre-2013 cases. So our total 2018 budget request for the district court is $3,142,614 of tax fund, and then our ADSAP fund of $7,500, and overall it's a decrease of 0.5%. As you can see, there is very little personnel in our budget. We do pay 2 part-time clerks for the Solid Growth parenting class, and we pay a coordinator out of that budget. Next is our court trustee program. Our Title 4D is a contract with the Department for Children and Families with the state. July 1st will start year 5 of a 10-year contract. We have 57 employees in this office, and they have an active caseload of 26,800 cases and collect more than $35 million annually for the children of Kansas. The employees of the court trustee are state employees, and they follow the Kansas court personnel rules. However, per statute, their benefits are provided through the county. The state also provides 2 full-time administrative hearing officers that hear only Title 40 cases, and there are no general fund dollars used for this program, as it is 100% self-supporting through the contract revenue. It's also important to note that the court trustee reimburses Sedgwick County over $200,000 a year in administrative charges for things like using the print shop and payroll and that sort of thing. Next is our non-4D court trustee. Based on Local Rule 423, unless good cause is shown, all child support orders without state involvement are referred to the court trustee for enforcement. We have 15 employees in this office, and they handle approximately 6,500 cases, and more than $38 million is collected for the children of Kansas. Their employment is set up the same way as the 4D program, and again, there are no general fund dollars used for this program, as it's 100% self-supporting through user fees. The total 2018 budget request for the court trustee is $6.1 million, and it's an increase of 3.1%. The total for both district court and court trustee in the 2018 request is $9.3 million, and that's a 1.92% increase. We also have 3 district court decision packages. First is attorney fees, and then foreign language interpreter fees and juvenile audio files. If you look at the district court expenditures, this is a chart for our actual expenditures in 2016, but we can go back several years and the chart doesn't change a whole lot. As you can see, the majority of our expenses are in attorney fees. Then approximately another 25% are in all the other statutorily required areas, which leaves approximately 25% to pay for things like paper, pens, chairs, copiers, that sort of thing. So we are asking for additional funds for attorney fees. If you look at the next chart, the green columns represent the amount of money spent each year on attorney fees. The blue line are the number of case filings, and the red line are case filings with attorney payments. So as you can see, up until approximately 2014, everything stayed pretty consistent. As case filings went up, attorney fees went up. If they went down, attorney fees went down. And we've remained pretty constant as far as the percentage of cases that have court-paid attorney fees. Then in 2014, we start seeing a large jump in our attorney fees. So we had to ask ourselves why we were seeing that. So we break it down into case type. And if you look at this chart, you can start seeing what I call burgundy in the middle above the blue starts really increasing in 2014. And those are our juvenile offender cases. So if we look at why our juvenile offender cases are increasing, the costs, I started looking at, well, what types of charges are we paying for? And so the next chart shows just the felony charges. But we can see in 2015, we have a huge spike in the number of weapons charges. Our murder rates are going up. We can start seeing our person felonies kind of level, but maybe starting to creep up a little bit. And then if we add in 2016, we can see the green line that our person felonies are sharply increasing, as well as if you look at the very bottom line, the red, those are murders, and we had 9 murders committed by juveniles in 2016. Those cases we will be paying for in 2018 probably because of those cases go on so long. Also, the person felonies, they're more severe, they take longer time, more involvement, and so we've definitely seen the amounts go up. And then there's also the unexpected costs of body-worn cameras. While everyone agrees they are necessary for our law enforcement and they are a good thing, it also has the unintended consequence of costing us more in attorney fees because all of those videos have to be reviewed by the defense attorney, where they may have used to receive a transcript that they were able to peruse and read quickly. Now, if somebody was in an interview room for 5 or 6 hours, they may have only talked for 20 minutes of that, but the defense attorney has to sit and watch the 5 and 6 hours to make sure that nothing happens during that time that they need to know about. Next, we move on to our foreign language interpreter fees. We have 2 statutes that guide this. 754351 states that we shall appoint an interpreter for someone whose primary language is other than English, and 4352 states that at no time shall we charge them for that service. We have more than 220 litigants that require foreign language interpretation each month. And our new contract that was let in 2016 through the purchasing department with Sedgwick County is for a flat rate of $10,000 per month. That represents approximately a $30,000 increase over what we used to budget for interpreters, which sounds like a lot until you go back and realize that they had not had an increase in quite some time. And so this will allow them to hire more interpreters and provide us with the services that we need. Next are our juvenile audio files. Up until 2017, juvenile audio recordings made in the courtrooms were stored on either cassette or compact discs. And in 2017, we began to save these recordings directly to a server for access and backup. That is the way we do all of the recording equipments in this building, and we just had never made the change in juvenile. And so we are proposing that we hire 2 part-time temporary positions in 2018 to work 19 hours a week, pay them $10 an hour for a total of $19,000. And then we need $1,000 for supplies. We're going to have to go buy a piece of equipment that will allow us to play the cassette tapes, since we don't have any of those anymore. And hopefully we will be able to find a couple people that will work for us and do that and just spend their days uploading files onto our server. Yes?
This is a process that we found that has become necessary across the state. What we have been saving these files, and there's a Supreme Court rule that requires these files to be saved for depending on the type, either 25, 50, or 100 years. Juvenile files need to be saved for 100 years. We have found, though, that the process of saving these to cassette tapes and to CDs, that material starts to degrade after 5 to 10 years. And in fact, we've just recently had a request for a transcript in a juvenile case where we went back through and it was saved to a CD. It had already been started to degrade. We couldn't access all of the information. We had to spend a significant amount of time to go back and try to rebuild the digital file on that. So this is not just a matter of convenience or a better way to do this. We're actually losing files that we have a legal obligation to maintain because of the format that they were being saved in. Go ahead.
And that's the end of our presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions, or Judge will also.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Commissioners, any questions? Well, nice thorough explanation.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We have one more presentation, but we'll reconvene in just a moment. Commissioners, the district attorney is on his way. That'll be our final presentation today. He will be on page 253. And they also have 3 decision packages, which start on page 582. Is here. Thank you for coming early. And we are on page 253.
Good afternoon, Mr. DA.
How's everybody?
Good, how you doing?
So I drew the see if you can keep them awake slot, huh?
Yeah.
All right, well, you ready to go?
We're ready.
All right. Well, how do I do here? There we go. Okay. All right, well, good afternoon. We'll start off here with an overview. The decision packages that we presented and a couple of other points I wanted to wrap up with to kind of get it in the front of your minds about some things we're going to be asking for long term or in the near future. So in terms of the decision packages, we've got 4 crime analyst positions I'm asking for and 1 administrative assistant. There's also a topic of discussion regarding sexual assault examination costs. I'll explain that. To wrap things up, I want to talk about something that's come to mind in the recent past. I've had some turnover, and we've done some internal assessment of some of the issues going on there, why we've lost a couple good people, and I'll tell you what we're finding and the effect it may have vis-a-vis my long-term goals for the office and keeping good people here. Last 2 things are the court restructuring. I think you know about the letter from the Supreme Court telling us we need to go from our central assignment to a permanent assignment situation. I'll kind of walk you through that. And then the final point was something we've talked about, I think, in every presentation I've made since I became district attorney, and that is the space needs of the Office of the District Attorney, especially the downtown division, and the effect that's having on our overall operations. With regard to the overview of the office, I think all of you are familiar with what it is we do, but just generally speaking, you understand we've got a criminal division. That's the main thing that most folks think about. We've got a gang unit, domestic violence, sexual assault unit, a financial and economic crime group of prosecutors, general trial 1 and 2. Those are the guys and folks, men and women who prosecute robberies, burglaries, just your normal felony offenses. The IAD docket is something you know from past presentations that I implemented a few years ago to try to improve the efficiencies within the office, and that's been a very good thing for us. It's helped us a lot in terms of keeping our numbers off the jury trial docket lower. Bottom line is we had 1,200 cases sitting on the jury trial docket in August of 2012, and we have reduced it by using this IAD docket and really in cooperating with the defense bar and the judges as well. We've reduced that number from 1,200 to it's hovering now consistently at about 600, 650. We cut it in half. And I really can't attribute it to anything other than that particular docket. Now, its effectiveness is starting to wane a little bit simply because of some changes in state law. Misdemeanor marijuana, you get 2 bites of the apple before it becomes a felony. And some of the low-level misdemeanor thefts, they've increased the threshold for what it takes to become a felony, and so there are more of those cases are staying in the city. The net effect is the same. It keeps our numbers back at that 600 level, but we're going to continue to run the program because we think it is a net benefit, and both in terms of efficiencies to the citizens who find themselves charged with crimes, but also to the overall criminal justice system and making sure that we're moving our cases in an efficient manner. The Consumer Fraud Division, Consumer Protection we like to call it, the Appellate Unit, which handles all of our appeals, the Kansas Supreme Court, Kansas Court of Appeals, and then notably we were successful and we contributed mightily to the success and the arguments before the United States Supreme Court in the Carr Brothers decision a year ago. So that's a unit we're proud of. Juvenile Offender, we just consistently charge somewhere around 1,100 to 1,200, 1,300 cases every year. It's a busy group. Child needed care, you know what those are. You know, these terrible cases, 500, 600 of those a year. Traffic court, you know, we anywhere from 20 to 23,000 cases a year roughly in the district court. Drug court, that Judge Kaufman runs right now, and then the probate division where we do our care and treatments. Obviously, you want us to put a mission statement together. We've done that, and I think it speaks for itself. But you know what our mission is here. We're trying to protect the citizens and ensure that the system operates in a fully fair manner. With the goal of improving the quality of life for all the citizens of the community. Our goal is not just to lock people up, but to get people to quit committing crimes, so their fellow citizens aren't victims anymore, and these people can go get their lives back together and start paying their taxes and being productive citizens. And those who won't, we've got a place for them, and that's the overarching goal of the office. Just to give you a kind of a flow chart of how the office runs, downtown at least. Obviously, the district attorney position at the top. I've got 3 deputies and Swiggle. Ron Pascal runs our juvenile division, and Justin Edwards has been promoted to deputy in charge of the trial division. And under the trial division are all those units that I mentioned a moment ago. 152 staff members altogether. Now, when you include the part-times and the temps, we have 145 full-time folks. So it's a large office. The downtown divisions and the support functions, and we'll show you your records management and the support staff as well, kind of just a breakdown of how we run things. It's fairly granular, but frankly, when I've talked to staff about, and when Jeanette and I have talked about this, Ms. Allaire, on how we present this, I want to be fairly granular. I want you to know exactly where things are. Just having a sweeping, here's who's in administration, doesn't give you much, doesn't tell you much. You need to know where your money's being spent and how we're divvying up this role. The next chart gives you more of a detail in terms of the number of attorneys and down at juvenile and what they're doing there. This is where we start to have a little bit of an overlay, both in terms of my presentation here for this next budget cycle, but also some of the larger issues in terms of space and attorney allocation and things like that. To the right side, you see in yellow. The left is here's what's going on at juvenile. We've got Mr. Pascal as our deputy. We've got sync attorneys, juvenile offender attorneys, an officer administrator down there. We have people who do the care and treatments. That makes sense in a juvenile court. I will add the care and treatment can go either way. Care and treatment goes with the probate court. Several years ago, the decision was made to move the probate division from downtown to the juvenile facility where they had some extra space. So fine. We've had one of our attorneys take over that role. We could do it here. We could do it there. It's not well, there was a time when we were pushing 700, 800 care and treatment cases in the course of a year, and through the crisis center that Marilyn Cook and Jason Schreck and some of those folks at ComCare had opened up, it really helped keep those, kind of stem that tide. We've kept our numbers lower. So we're able to handle it with one person right now. But anyway, that's one, I guess I'll put an asterisk there. Probate doesn't necessarily fit in juvenile, but it works. That's fine. But to the right side of the column, or the page, there is what's in yellow. And what's in yellow would include the adult criminal diversion and the appellate unit. Both of those divisions are located currently at juvenile, down there on East Morris. Having adult diversion doesn't make a lot of sense to do it at the district attorney's juvenile department. But I put them there because that's the only place where we have space. I have no more room downtown to facilitate that. So people, if you tell them this is where you got to go if you're applying for adult diversion, they'll make it, and it works, but it is not ideal. Having our appellate division down there again, they kind of like it because it's quiet in the first floor down there. These are guys who literally all they do all day is read transcripts of trials and do legal research and write. So they don't mind it. But again, what are they working on appeals for? Criminal cases, adult criminal cases. There are a handful of juvenile offender or child needed care proceedings that are appealed in the course of a year. Not even to say the lion's share doesn't even do it justice. 99% of what they do is going to be an adult criminal case. And so we have people who literally schlep down bankers' boxes full of reports back and forth from our office down here to them on a daily basis. When they're done with one case, they send it back down to the clerks and back and forth. Does it work? Sure. And that's great. But is it ideal? It's not. So it's not a dire situation, but ideally, I'd rather have all of those folks under one roof where they're dealing with the adult criminal division in support of that. In terms of the actual overview of the budget presentation today, the decision packages, we start here with our overall budget from this past year. Let's see here, 2017 revised shows me $11,700,000. When you include the requests, I'm asking for more people, and so my budget actually, in terms of human resources, will go up a little bit, but in terms of the overall budget, get in some of the reasons for that, but it actually shows me about a 5% decrease. If you get rid of some of the grants that are running out, we don't have very many in our office, but I think it's more in the 4% range. But in terms of the decision packages themselves, here we go, number one. Looks like it's on page 253 of the information in front of you all, is a crime analyst positions. And this really goes back to the discussion we've had for the last year and a half. I think the first time I brought this to this body's attention was when we did the retreat over at the 911 building, 2 years ago roughly. It's tied to very much the body camera influx coming to, first and foremost, Wichita Police Department. 429 cameras were added. It went over time, but the last one went into play, I think, September, October of last fall. So we're less than a year out from full implementation of all the Wichita Police Department officers who are, if they're officers on the street, they've got a body camera on. The sheriff uses the dash cams, that's what they're commonly referred to, but even some of the smaller departments, Cheney, I'm trying to think of a few others, they have body cameras now. There's obviously fewer of them, and they don't bring a lot of cases to us. But so the question is, how do we as a district attorney's office handle that information? And that is a loaded term, handle it. First of all, we've got an obligation under the Constitution to provide discovery. Discovery meaning all of the reports and everything germane to the defense. We have to give them anything that is exculpatory, meaning it could help them defend themselves. We are statutorily obliged to give them everything, even that's inculpatory, things that show that they're guilty. We have a policy where we turn over everything, absent it being something of a mental health record or something like that that's protected, and then we go to a judge to get an assessment. But I'm going to turn over things to the defense. It's the quickest way for a district attorney's office to get themselves in trouble. You can look nationally. When DAs around the country have gotten in trouble for something, it's typically almost exclusively because they forgot or failed to or arguably made a decision not to turn something over to the defense. If we've got a good case, there's nothing for us to hide behind. We should give them everything. That sounds good until you start having to deal with 429 body cameras. And now the process is, how do I get that information over here? Currently, we've got them on disks. We are in the process literally daily of figuring out how to get that delivered in a digital format through the web. When I ran for DA, I never thought I'd start looking at the bandwidth of the Sedgwick County, the bandwidth capabilities. But that's something we've gotten into the weeds about that I won't bore you with at 3:30 in the afternoon. But these are the kind of things we're worried about, because I want to make sure I've gotten all that information from them daily, because I got to get it to the defense. Then I have to make sure I have at least some copy of it for my own people to review. So I don't want to overburden our servers here at the county and, within a year's time, fill the servers full of body camera video. Then I've got to be able to copy it in some fashion so that I can get it to the defense attorneys. I'll tell you one anecdote. When this was happening, I recently went to the city and asked leadership over there, the cameras were, I understand absolutely why it's a good idea for this community, whether you're on the county side or the city side, for the people who are doing most of the law enforcement in the city of Wichita to have body cameras is a good thing for the citizenry. But the public defenders who are funded by the state, some of you are former state legislators, know they are beholden entirely to the state in terms of their funding stream. They have no ability to upgrade their IT budget. I asked Mark Rudy, the chief public defender, what's your IT budget? He laughed. He goes, we don't have one. We just get computers when they choose to give them to us. The computers they had were not, put it simply, not good enough, not fast enough to handle the influx of these body camera videos coming over the internet. Instead, they can handle it on disk, but if I'm going to start sending it in another way, they didn't have the hardware. Not the software, the hardware. So I went to the city and said, would you be willing to give them a one-time payout to buy them some computers? I think I was a little more delicate than this, but they're the ones who bought the body cameras. They could help us out a little bit here. And to their credit, they did. And they're going to buy the public defenders 10 Chromebooks so they can handle this better, and also going to help them to show it to their clients, and because they have to review this information with their clients, make informed decisions about whether to plead or to take it to trial. Anyway, this shows you what a monumental task this is. So the final thing is, for me, after I've handled all of that, just complied with that minor thing, the Constitution, and the thing I have to in terms of turning it over, then I got to figure out how I'm going to handle in-house the allocation of resources in terms of who's going to read this stuff or watch this stuff. I've got 55 attorneys, but when you pull out the appellate attorneys and the traffic attorneys and the sync attorneys and the JO attorneys, and I'm just talking about the guys who handle criminal cases, guys and gals handling criminal cases, 18 to 20 of us doing those. For 3,500 criminal cases, that's a lot of work. And each one of those videos, you got to watch them in real time. There's no way to, review it in a transcript. And so I don't know in 10 years what this is going to look like. But rather than coming in here and saying I need 20 more attorneys just because I think that might make it easier, I want to start simple here. And so what I'm going to ask for are 4 permanent part-time positions to start this process in terms of, okay, what does it take realistically to review 1,000 videos in the course of 90 days, or in the court, if the average attorney is carrying somewhere between 70 and 100 cases, each one of those is going to have somewhere between 3 and 5 videos. Now, a murder case, you may have 20 or 30 or 40 videos, every cop who respond at the scene. But on a home burglary, it's 2 cops who respond, maybe 2, maybe a third who interviewed the victim. How much time is it going to take? How much human resources is it going to take for this office to handle that? And this is my first step towards that. We've added some more attorneys, which helped, but this is more than we can handle with just a couple of attorneys. But rather than coming back and asking for 5 or 10 more attorneys to do this, let's see if we can get some people part-time. So what I'm thinking would be retired cops, or maybe cops from smaller jurisdictions or even Wichita, I suppose, who can work, a few hours, 20 hours a week, and come over here and watch videos. Maybe, I have ideas about what I think this is going to look like, but let's start small, one step, and see what this does for us with 4. We may come back after a year and say, I need 10, or I just need 2 full-time. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, and I'd be happy to ask other jurisdictions around the country who have done this longer than us, but there's very few. Everybody's at the same stage we are right now. Phoenix may be 6 months ahead of us. Memphis tried and stalled out, and some jurisdictions quit using body cams because they couldn't handle the influx. And so this is where this first decision package is our first attempt. After we got 2 attorneys last year to help us with this, and that's kept our heads above water. But it's more than what 2 additional attorneys can do for us. So that's where this first decision package is coming from. Second decision package is a journal entry clerk. A journal entry is a term of art that we use to describe the document that is prepared at the close of a hearing. Typically in Sedgwick County, we refer to journal entries are going to be journal entries of sentencing. Somebody goes up to court and is sentenced by the judge and either granted probation or sent to the penitentiary, and at the end of that, a document is generated that reflects everything the judge ordered. In 1993, when the sentencing grid was passed, I think there were, Jeanette found this the other day, 4 special rules for little tweaks that made us, 4 special considerations one had to analyze before you could finalize a journal entry. The legislature, attends to changes in the law and makes their own changes in the law, but the point is, over time, over the last 24 years, a journal entry now has over 47 special rules, and so 47, that's right. 47 special rules now, and so it is highly complicated. It takes a lot of time. Jail credit is something that becomes hotly contested. The guy was arrested 3 weeks ago in the county, but he's been held on our case, or on a city case, for 2 months before that. Where do you put the jail credit? Does he get credit in the city case and the county case, or just one or the other? And you kind of get into the navel-gazing side of things, but it takes a lot of time. What does that matter? Because no one can be shipped out of county to go start serving their prison sentence until that journal entry is done, meaning even 1 day delay. Do that 1,000 times a year, jail costs go up. Jail size of inmates, or number of inmates goes up. Population is what I'm trying to say. So we're asking for another person, just one more. Basically, what we're talking about is a staff person who can assist in those journal entries. It's something we were able to do with 1 person for a period of time. Then it became 2. We had 3 at one time, and then we were able to be pretty efficient. But it's with the jail credit and some of these other things that have taken place. E-filing has made it. E-filing is something the state wanted us to go to, which has its benefits, but that's one area where it slows things down. And so to keep the process moving and keep people who need to go on to the state penitentiary system because they've been ordered to do so by a judge, and to make sure that happens in a timely manner, I think this will help us a lot. Decision Package 3 is the sexual assault examinations. That's not really anything I'm asking. Well, I'm asking for more money, but to explain it this way, the state statute requires that anybody who goes and gets a sexual assault examination, that the county in which the crime occurred is supposed to pay that medical facility for that service. And in Sedgwick County since 95, I believe, we have had a SANE department, sexual assault nurse examiner department at St. Joe. Then, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Wesley put one together as well. And so we have the benefit of having two very good facilities to do that. There was a time when the county asked the district attorney's office to be the flow through for that money. The reason being, we were at least in a position to double check that every exam that we were paying for, that the county was paying for, actually occurred. Not that there's any reason to believe there would be fraud, but it was just a fail-safe. A law was passed a few years ago which allows a woman, or man for that matter, a victim, to go get an examination and ask the hospital to hold on to the kit where the swabs were taken, but not notify law enforcement. The idea is there's people who might need some time to think about whether or not they really want to go forward with a criminal investigation. But if you wait 3 weeks, evidence is gone. So this is a mechanism to try to encourage people to at least get the test done. Good public policy, but it effectively negates any benefit to my office being the flow through for that money. Now, that being said, we'll continue to do it if that's what the county wants us to do. But I just let you know, that's one issue. The second is, for the last 2 years, we've been about $50,000 under. There's just more people coming forward. And I don't know if there's more sexual assaults or more people just recognizing that when they are sexually assaulted, they have this option of pursuing a sexual assault examination and submitting to a kit. But whatever the cause, the bottom line is it's costing more. And so the last couple of years we've had to come back. And the county's always great, to help us out and pay that extra money. But we've been, $50,000 and $75,000 under what the estimates were. So we need to increase the line item, and if we're going to, whether we are the ones paying it in the pay through or you all or the county handles it in more of a general sense, doesn't matter. So there's a grand total. When you include the sexual assault examinations, we're talking $190,000 worth of budget that wasn't in my budget last year. Now, I'll turn my attention with the last few minutes here, talk about a couple of other things while I've got the floor here. Attorney salary. You know that I've got 55 attorneys plus myself, so we're a very large law office. June of 2000 was the last time a comprehensive salary study was conducted by HR of my office. There have been 2 countywide since then, but the attorneys from my office were not a part of that. We're kind of our own animal, I suppose. We're not exactly like some of the other, let's put it this way, we're the only one, obviously, with 55 attorneys working for us, so that makes us unique right off the bat. Competitive salaries necessary, though, to maintain and, as we're learning, retain qualified personnel. And this is what's really caused me to want to take a few moments of your time to bring this to your attention. In the last few months, we've had 3 attorneys resign. One had been here 2.6 years. She transferred within the county system to another attorney position, and she got a $29,000 pay raise. That's pretty hard for me to compete with. And I don't begrudge the other county department for taking her. She's great and will serve the citizens of this county in another capacity in a good way. But my point is, in mentioning that it was an inter-county transfer, was simply to say she didn't go to Folston-Siefken to earn this kind of money. She didn't go to the private sector, Koch Industries. She's still a county employee of this county. Another attorney, 2.3 years of experience, left. She was going to go work for a local municipality and be the city attorney for one of our local cities here in Sedgwick County. She's got a $16,250 pay increase after 2.3 years of working for me. The final one, which none of them are easy to lose, but somebody who's been with us for 9.7 years, who I thought, frankly, was one of my, somebody I was going to keep for a good long time. She was absolutely committed to the program and loved what she did, loved this job. but she got hired away by the federal side to be a federal public defender. They're going to pay her almost $30,000 more, $29,600. So again, she didn't go to the private sector. She went to another governmental agency. That's a blow when you lose those kind of people who you're training and keeping up and handing off. I mean, these are qualified good folks, and that's going to happen working the DA's office. I mean, if I start walking the halls from when I started 20 years ago. There's less than 10 of us that are still around from 20 years ago. So I get that. I don't expect that people are going to stay here forever. But being good at trying murders, being good at trying rape cases, that's a special skill. And it's not something I want to lose simply because of someone not having the ability to make a salary that they can live on. Now, what's changed? Why is it that, why did I stick around for 20 years? Well, one of the things that we have to, I think, deal with in my office, but probably this is a conversation for really any department, the cost of education. To come and work and be an attorney in my office requires at least 7 years. Some of these kids take longer in undergrad, but it's 4-year undergrad degree plus 3 law school. So we did just a quick study. What's the debt load coming out? I had offered a guy a job about 2 years ago, and we were pretty competitive right off the bat. I felt like $50,000 starting salary coming out of law school. I thought that ought to, get anybody in the door. He'd actually been working for a year out of law school, and so I offered him like 51 or 52 to account for the fact he'd been out. He couldn't take the job. It wasn't enough with his student loans. The average student loan, according to the U.S. News World Report for KU, my 2 biggest feeders are going to be KU and Washburn Law Schools. Almost $89,000 in student debt if you're a KU grad, and $81,500 if you're a Washburn grad. That's tough for me to compete with, to get kids to want to come back to Wichita, work here, and work in my office and commit themselves to public service and handling these tough cases and this high stress world that my office functions in when they come out that kind of debt. I can't change their debt load, but if we're going to continue to compete long term, we're going to have to start talking about salary. And so that's something I wanted to put on the table. We're doing a salary study right now. We're working on that, and I'll have some more things to bring back to your attention at some point. But I'm not asking for anything special at the moment, but I'd rather sort of plant the seed down and give you an idea why I want to have this conversation in a more fully realized fashion down the road. A couple other things. Court central assignment versus decentralization. If a case is charged right now, you're all used to seeing the video first appearances. So there'll be a TV, and there's a guy in an orange jumpsuit, and Judge Gehring now is the central assignment judge for the criminal division. He's interacting with the guy saying, this is your charges, here's your first appearance, and your preliminary hearing will be set on thus and such date. That's the central assignment system. The next day, every day, go up to Judge Gehring's courtroom, and you will see people showing up to his courtroom. I'm ready for my prelim. Okay, you're assigned to whichever judge it may be. Central assignment, then he assigns it. He's kind of the air traffic controller for the criminal division. There's a concurrent civil assignment judge who does the same thing for the civil department. That has served us well since the 60s, and it is also how I've set my office up, and frankly, I can't even take credit for it. Keith Sanborn probably set the office up in this way with divisions and a trial division and an appellate division, because that's the way we function. I can have 5 attorneys in the gang unit because they go to wherever they're assigned out. There's a decision from the Supreme Court that they believe it would be more efficient and it works better with their software management system to go to a permanent assignment, which is not at all uncommon, and frankly, it's probably more common than the way we've always done things. It's called a permanent assignment. So the day of the first appearance, there's 5 people charged with crimes. Number 1, you go to Judge Howell, then you go to Judge O'Donnell, then you go to, and each person down the road just goes to the next judge, and if you're the judge, this is your case. You own it till it's done. No one else will touch it. So you are responsible for your own dockets, and that works very well, but then it would require me to have people assigned to each judge. Think back to what I said earlier. I've got 55 attorneys, but if you take out J.O., Sink, and all these other, and that, what have I got in criminal? 18 to 20 attorneys, 21 attorneys roughly doing criminal only. If you take out the 4 family law judges, you take out the 3 juvenile judges and the 1 probate judge, and you take out Judge Fleetwood, that leaves me with 18 judges. If I've got to have a body in every chair every morning, that means I am a 1-to-1. I got to have. There's no divisions. There's no units anymore. I don't know how I arrange for coverage and vacations and things like that. I've told the judges I can't do 18. I cannot handle that. Give me 10 or 12. It's going to be a sea change, a monumental change, and I don't know what that'll do to us. But and I don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's a state courts assessment coming in from the Center for State Courts in Virginia. They're going to be here this summer to assess our system and how we do things and what would work for us. So I'm not asking for anything right now, but again, if I come back to you and say I need help and here to the tune of something, I want you to know I'm not just pulling this out of my hat. I see this coming, and maybe it's not going to be as bad as I fear, but I have to be prepared that it might, and so I need to prepare you all for this possibility. So again, no action to be taken today. Just be aware this is another significant change. It changed the way we've been doing business since the 1960s, and to suggest that there's not going to be some ramifications for completely upending that system, I think would be short-sighted of me if I hadn't warned you about it. Space constraints. I think now everybody has probably gone through at least a walkthrough of the downtown office and the juvenile office of all the county commissioners. So you know the general layout of things. We are basically at a maximum downtown. I'm out of space. And I've been telling you for a couple of years that we're getting there, and that's where we are. If I needed, I think I've got room for 1 more attorney. And at that point, I'd have to start moving people back to juvenile. I'd have to send investigators down there, or I don't know what I'd have to do, but we're out of space down here. And while that causes us problems in the short term, it's really the long term I'm concerned about. Crime is not decreasing. The complexity of crime is not decreasing. I can tell you just anecdotally, because you always worry, is it just us? Are we doing something wrong? But I've talked. In the last week, I had occasion to talk to one of the command staff of the Emporia Police Department. I talked to a deputy chief in charge of the Johnson County DA's office, and I spoke at some length to one of the head prosecutors in the Riley County Attorney's office, and just different parts of the state. What do you all experience? And they're all feeling the same thing we are, which is you've got to feel like you walk to the office every day and someone hands you a 100-pound sack of flour, and it's just, okay, now go do your job. What's changed? I can tell you 20 years ago when I started, I could walk in, I would stand outside of Ann Swiegel's office on Thursdays because that was when they assigned trials. I was young, I wanted to try cases. She'd hand me a file and say, go try it Monday. Yes, ma'am. I'd take the file home, I'd read all the reports. I could be ready by Friday afternoon. I kind of had a feel for it. I'd work on it over the weekend, and I'd try the case on Monday. You could do that then. Today, the files are in bankers' boxes because there's transcripts, there's interviews of everybody, there's surveillance tape of every location, there's body cameras, there's jail phone calls from these guys who won't get off the phone with their friends talking about the crime they committed. All of which is good. None of this hurts us, but there's so much more to process and read and be attentive to and know that you've gotten and know that you gave to the defense so they can defend their client. It's just changed. It's the bulk of it. And for me to keep pace with that, I'm going to need help. I've never come to you and asked for some huge influx in terms of personnel or money, but each year I want to chip away. The way you eat the elephant is one bite at a time. I'm out of space to add help. And so I don't want to come back to you 10 years from now and go, we're drowning at this point, and I need help right now to the tune of a brand new building somewhere. That would be, I don't think I'd be doing my job, and I'd certainly make it very hard for you to do yours if I ran things that way. So what I'm bringing to your attention is we're out of space, and I know there's a larger conversation now in terms of what to do with the county, and the ongoing conversations really probably happened as long as I've been around here is, what's the point of the courthouse? Should we have administration? Should it just be the courts? Should we, you'll make the ultimate call, but in terms of me at least helping you make an informative decision vis-a-vis public safety and my role in that, I want to make sure that I've given you this information up front, and I'll continue to have these conversations over the coming months. One other thing, I mentioned body cameras, but I saw this in the paper there. When I saw a year ago that the city, at the time it was even before Mr. Ramsey was the chief, it was when I can't remember who, I think Norman Williams may have been the chief at the time, but when they was talking about the body cameras, what happens across the street does affect me, because they're the ones handling, I think 84% of my cases come from the city of Wichita on the criminal side. And so I saw in the paper last week, it piqued my interest that the Chief Ramsey is asking for 73 additional personnel, including 49 sworn officers. I don't know how much of that, if any of that, he'll get. But if he gets 50 more cops on the street, that's going to affect the amount of business they're bringing across the street to me. So again, ripple effect and how it affects us. Point out one other thing here. I'm going to actually start here. Go one slide ahead. The little person down at the bottom, if you can see him, is the guy walking into court to pay his traffic ticket or to deal with his traffic offense if he's in the county court, not in the city court, but over here in district court. And, nobody set out and put a system in place like this, but it's kind of the death of a thousand cuts, or the, I'm not quite sure how you put it, but over time, mission creep maybe is a good way to put it, but over time, what used to be a fairly simple process, given the bulk and the number of people who we deal with, 23,000 traffic tickets on average, I think the lowest number since I've been DA is 18,000 cases in 1 year, and the most was 23 or 24,000. So 22,000 roughly is probably a good average number of traffic cases. Now, thankfully, a lot of folks go ahead and just pay their tickets, but some don't. Some want to fight it, and some can't just pay it. You didn't have a license on you when you were pulled over, so you have to come show us you have a license, or you didn't have insurance and now you do have proof that you had insurance. Someone has to physically come and deal with that. So they come into court. Here's the process, and we didn't try to overstate this or make it look worse than it really is. This is about as simple a flow chart as there is for the traffic, for the citizen who comes to this building to deal with their traffic offense. If it looks like if it looks highly complex and difficult to follow, it is. Not by design, but it is. We have the 5th floor traffic courtroom. We now have 7th floor is now where the clerks are. We've got people in the adult diversion complex at juvenile if they want to apply for diversion. We've got a traffic diversion downstairs. We've got, the bottom line is you can just see what kind of a mess this is. Go to the 5th floor and stand there for 5 minutes. I'll buy you a Coke if somebody doesn't walk up and ask you where they're supposed to go. I mean, just walking in there, anybody who looks semi-official, people are going to walk up to you and go, where am I supposed to be? My high school kid who we hire part-time, he was up there moving boxes, and because he was carrying boxes, someone stopped him and asked him where to go. Luckily, he didn't try to give advice because he couldn't have given any good ones. But it's a difficult process for citizens to interact with our traffic system. So what we've come up with is something to consider. And this isn't, granted, I don't mean to be presumptuous here, but to the extent that there's a larger conversation here about how we could better utilize the courthouse. For instance, just in terms of traffic alone, if Linda's office downstairs on the main court, you walk in those main doors, you walk through security, the treasurer's office is off there to your left to the south. This is an outline of her treasurer's office without any change to structure. The only thing different would be adding some chairs there in the middle. If we turn that into a traffic courtroom where people could come, there'd all these along the south wall where they could interact with their attorneys and deal with, their attorneys come to our attorney and say, hey, my client really did have their insurance in here. So you could have a quiet conversation, have a judge's chamber or judge's small little bench back there in the corner where they could deal with the occasional trial that does take place. Just think about this. Of the let's say 22,000 cases were filed in the course of a year, and let's say 10,000 people pay them and never come to court or just don't show up. That's still 10 to 13,000 people are going to come to this courthouse, park in that garage, walk in the door, walk through those metal detectors and say, where do I go? And then they're going to go back to this. Let's assume they figure it out. Just think of the foot traffic and the number of people on those elevators, up and down those elevators, and going. If you could walk in the door and go straight to your left, deal with it, pay it at those kiosks that already exist. We could put a fire patrolman right in there who could deal with the folks who just want to show their insurance or just want to show that they had a license or whatever. Deal with their whatever traffic system accusation they had. They could be done and walk back out the doors and never go, funnel into the rest of the courthouse. Not that traffic court is a good experience for anybody, but it would be a better experience for our citizens who were unlucky enough, like any of us could be, who just got a ticket and just want to come to court and deal with it. All I'm getting at is, if we're going to talk about how we utilize the space here, there's ways we could do so that not only enhance certainly my ability to do my job and my department as well, but also the manner in which the citizens interact with any of our departments. This is just something we threw together in my office on an afternoon. So that's the gist of it. As a recap, it's the journal entry clerk to help us get our journal entries done faster. It's the 4 part-time but permanent positions, but part-time people to help us review and deal with and interpret body cameras and all that sort of surveillance cameras, that sort of thing. I forgot to say one thing. The first person to apply was a sort of manna from heaven for us. She used to work in the office. She's an attorney. She actually quit the office a few years ago to go become a professor of criminal justice at Newman. And she said, I'll do that for a summer for you. And with her trained attorney eye, I think she's going to be somebody who can give us a better idea of what it's really going to take to do this in an efficient manner that'll assist our attorneys and do their job ethically and also efficiently. So she's the first person we've hired to do this. We're just going to make space for her because it's a part-time position. We can do that right now. But I think we're going to be in a better position over time to figure out what we're going to need to handle this kind of digital and video discovery and information. So we got those 4 permanent part-time, the the journal entry clerk, and then the final would be just the piece with regard to the sexual assault examinations and what to do with that funding stream, whether it goes through me or through the county. It would be probably more efficient just to add some money to it so that you wouldn't have to come back each year as we have the last 2 and add to it. Any questions?
We do have a comment from Commissioner Ransall.
I have a question on the journal entries. Are these things they have to just write out manually, or can it be automated, or
Sure.
is a bunch of calculations or something?
There is some. So it's I can get you a copy of one time as an example, but it's anywhere from 3 to say 10 pages. Depends on how many counts the person is or been convicted of. It has all the information about the individual because it has to be read and interpreted by the Department of Corrections. They need to know they got the right guy. This is the thing that's going to determine if you're charged and committed, you've been given a 138-month sentence. This is the thing that's going to ensure that he does exactly the amount of time he's supposed to do and not a minute less or more. And so it's going to be very detailed. The actual state statute he was convicted of, the counts. If he's on probation, for instance, every explicit piece of, you're not supposed to do this and this and this and this. Most of the judges is pretty uniform, but a few of them have their own tweaks. They want a special line in years ago, and if he were here, he'd probably laughingly admit this. We had everybody else's journal entry, and then we had Judge Kennedy's journal entry because he had his own set of language he wanted in his. We have, let's see, jail credit can be very nuanced, and it's all about the individual.
Okay,
so
they have to type it out.
Every one of them
individually. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question on the central assignment versus decentralization, and I've had some people talk to me about this a little bit. Are you saying this is the impetus behind this is their computer system at the state level?
Let's put it this way. I'm without being. That is the explanation.
It's not coming from us.
No, not from. Well, it's not coming from me. I can tell you that, and I don't believe it's coming from. Let's put it this way. There are a lot of cities around the country who do a permanent assignment, not the way we do it, who do it that way. That's a legitimate way to do it, and I think there's a legitimate argument from even maybe some judges, a few members of the defense bar who might like it that way. But the bottom line is the reason we were given was when the Supreme Court of Kansas wrote this letter and said we want you to go to central assignment was it'll make our efficiencies greater because of our software, and that was really the explanation given.
That's what I want to get at. I know people are hesitant to straight out tell me that it's because of the state software, Daniel, that we're having to do this.
I think there's other reasons, but that's, yeah.
I mean, I understand there's reasons that you could do it, but this particular change is being generated by that. I mean, we didn't ask for it. So I think we should keep that in mind when we make decisions relating to that whole issue.
And the only thing I'll point out is, yeah, I mean, I've been I don't mind change if it's going to improve something, but I will be a thorn in the side if it's not going to improve things. That being said, in my world, when a judge orders something, the answer is okay. And I may be stuck with that irrespective of what any of the county commissioners or myself may think. This is going to come from the courts are going to tell us how they're going to run the court system. And that's, I mean, as long as we're in a communication, we're working together to make this better, I think there's room for improvement over the existing system. I just need to make sure that it's something I can, the day it goes live, I hate to be crass here, but I got to have butts in chairs. I got to have people in those chairs in all those courtrooms to stand when they say appearances from the state of Kansas. Okay.
Okay, we have another question from Commissioner Howell.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I was thinking about kind of along the same lines as the previous question, but I guess what I think I heard you say was if this central assignment is changed to permanent assignment system, I'm still having trouble finding out exactly what the advantages of that system is, but it sounds like the one aspect of this is we don't have enough judges to keep up with what we're doing currently. You didn't say that way, but I think that's what I heard. Right between the lines, we need more judges.
I will put it this way. That is an argument. It's not one that I've made or intended to make today. But I think that's one of the arguments is that there's a couple of things that this is designed to do.
I thought you said you don't have enough. It would be difficult to have enough attorneys to match up with the number of judges that we currently have.
I'm sorry. Yes, that's what maybe I misunderstood your question.
Well, I'm trying to figure out in terms of number of judges or I guess number of attorneys. You need more people one way or the other.
I'm sorry. I will need more people if they expect me to be in every courtroom. Yes, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking if I thought that this was designed because I felt we needed more judges.
Well, no, that's really not my exact question. My question is, I guess we had the 18th Judicial Court here just a few minutes ago, and one thing they didn't talk about was what their plan is years in the future in terms of judge count.
Sure.
I think they did talk about how many judges we do have, but making this change, it's going to impact you as well in terms of your number of attorneys.
Yes, yes. Let's put it this way. If it comes down that the Center for State Courts comes in and says, for you to work at maximum efficiency, you need to have 18 judges calling criminal cases every day. I can tell you right now, I don't have the staff for that. There's no way I can have people in 18 courtrooms every morning at 9:30 and have the same. I mean, let's put it this way: my office is no different than anyone else's. I've got people who can handle any case I throw at them. I've also got kids that have been out of traffic court for 3 years. I'm not going to expect them to go into Judge Brown's courtroom and handle the murder that happened to be assigned to him. I've got to be able to move people around. I've got people with expertise in gang crimes. I've got people with expertise in sex crimes. That's been the advantage of this system from our perspective. So now if they come back and say, you need 9 judges, okay, I can do that. And we can make that work. I might need an extra few people over time. They come back and tell me I need 18. I'm probably back here a year from now or maybe mid-year, whenever it is they expect us to go live, and saying, I need 6 or 7 more attorneys. I can't. There's no way I can be in 18 courtrooms at once like that.
So along that line, what is the timeline for this change?
The way I understand it is the Center for State Courts is coming in this summer. They are going to work with all of the parties, and to that, I understand that to mean my office, me, the defense bar, the judges, of course, probably the sheriff. I mean, that's another thing is the sheriff is going to be impacted by this because he'll have to have people delivered to 18 courtrooms. There's no way he could do that right now without pulling every cop off the street just to be in every courtroom, right? The probation and all these people. Probation is probably less effective, but they still have to have people that then go to probation violation hearings in all these courtrooms. So I'm not trying to sky is falling kind of situation here, but that's maybe worst case scenario. If they hone it back to 9 or 10 or 12 courtrooms, the impact is less significant. But yes, that's the impact it would have on me and other county agencies, other county departments.
This may not be a question that you can answer or maybe want to answer, but I think we're one of the only counties, if not the only county in the state of Kansas, that does not have any magistrate judges. And if you want to consider it to be a smaller courtroom for not just traffic, but for maybe some really routine type cases. Do we have any plans to maybe adding that to this building if we were going to go down that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I'll defer to Judge Fleet, but I know that is something that's been discussed, yes. And I would also point out, we're not probably the only county that doesn't have a magistrate, but we're the only district, one of the few districts that doesn't have a county. Johnson County has doesn't have magistrate, excuse me. So, for instance, I started my career in Junction City in the 8th Judicial District. We didn't have a magistrate in Junction, but we had a magistrate in Abilene and one in Council Grove, both of whom came to Junction City twice a week. Both of them did for different hearings. So the district shared magistrates. So one minor point. But yes, I think we're the only district in the state. I don't know about Shawnee County or Wyandotte, but I know Johnson and I know Reno County are both district attorney situations, and both of them have magistrates.
In terms of the comment you made about Wichita's requesting 73 additional personnel, 49 commissioned officers, and 24 civilian positions. I heard Friday, I was in a meeting Friday, and I think, again, I don't know if anybody wants to check this number out, but I understand when Chief Ramsey showed up here that they were significantly understaffed with their commissioned law enforcement officers. They've actually worked very hard to fill the current staffing table, and I think he said somewhere around 80 or 90 officers they've added to their staffing. They filled those empty seats just since he's been here, about the last year and a half. So the way I see it is this is going to be about a 1/3 additional. They've already added 2/3, and so I'm just saying, have you seen? Prior Ramsey, we were roughly. I'm going to say close to 100 officers down, or so, something like that. Now we've added them already, so I'm curious about how that impacts.
Sure. Well, in terms of our year-to-year filings. It's one of those things, you don't see big spikes, but if you go back 10 years, you see a slow trend moving upward. We're not filing any fewer cases than we did last year. Since I've taken over, we've filed more cases every year consecutively since the year before. Can I attribute that all to more cops in the street? Not necessarily. But even nationally, if you want to go macro, police department will call them Schedule I offenses, person crimes, violent offenses, the indexes, however you want to categorize it. Property crimes are stagnant or lower in most places, but murder has gone up. Now, again, you can get into take Chicago out of the equation, take Memphis out of the equation, and then one could argue that the national rate's actually a little more flat. But my point is, crime is going up in all major cities. We're in that category. I can't attribute it just to the more cops in the street, but the bottom line is you find what you look for. You got more cops in the street, you're going to find more crime. If they find more crime, they're going to bring a percentage of them to me, because 70+% of my cases it's like 78% of my juvenile cases, 84, or vice versa. 78% of my criminal cases, 84% of my juvenile cases, more juveniles live in the city than in the county, come from the Wichita Police Department. So if they're adding more cops and they're solving more crimes, there's going to be more coming my way.
My final question is this, and along the same meeting I had on Friday, some of the police officers I was speaking with said that, for example, the accusations against police officers, and I would like to extrapolate that to maybe other types of crimes, but the video cameras are actually encouraging people not to go to trial because the evidence is so compelling. They're like, I can't win this. They may not realize how compelling it is until they see a videotape. So I'm just wondering, the body cams, are they not reducing the number of actual trials because we actually have better evidence?
Yeah, it's hard for me to say other than based on anecdote. But yeah, I can tell you there's nothing bad about this from my perspective. I mean, I love body cameras. Jail calls. I mean, you'd be stunned how many guys confess to their mothers on the jail calls that their first call they make is to tell how they committed the crime. I love it. It helps us a lot, but someone still has to listen to all those minutes. Someone still has to watch all that video. It has slowed down the process, but we're getting convictions and we're getting cases to plead. Yes, that has been beneficial, but it just, someone's still got to plow through it all.
I guess what I'm saying is, it seems like maybe there's a shift from maybe things will go to trial and then result in a jury making a decision or whatever, and maybe more plea cases. I don't know how that impacts the attorneys and stuff in the process. I would think there may be
the preparation time,
maybe a shift in the way this is being adjudicated, I guess.
I mean, ideally, I'd love to have I mean, here's the rub. Here's a quick anecdote. Since I'm the last guy of the day, I guess I'm only taking up your time, but there's nobody waiting on me. But I remember years ago seeing an attorney here in town, very good attorney. He was trying a case against me, and he stood up and wanted to cross-examine this witness I had put on the stand, a kid. He said, "Isn't it true that you didn't do thus and such?" And I'm looking at this, and I know for a fact he was on vacation the weekend before, and he used one of his assistants to prep the case for him. And his assistant handed him this file and showed him. So he was, with righteous indignation, shaking this transcript at this kid. Well, he didn't read it. His assistant did. I stood up and said, "Counsel, look at page 23. He read it and went, "I'll withdraw the question." My point is, you never want to be the guy who walks into court relying on what someone else told you was on the tape. You know? We're professionals. We have an ethical obligation not to utter a word in court that you don't have a good faith basis to believe in. And so, not to get too heavy-handed about it, but I would never have prepped a case where I hadn't done all the work myself. I don't care if I co-chaired a case. One time in my life did I ever turn something over to someone else. It was the Doug Belt case of capital murder. We had 25,000 pages worth of stuff, and I finally looked at Barry Disney, my co-counsel, and said, "I'll handle the rape cases, you handle the DNA." We had to divide and conquer. Other than that, every witness I've ever called to the stand, I was prepared, whether it was me or my attorney, the guy sitting next to me, I could have asked him every question I needed to because I was ready. And that's just how we're wired. And so I can hire a fleet of people to watch video, but there's no prosecutor worth his or her salt that's going to walk into court having never watched the videos and just seen a written memo synopsis from somebody else who told him what was on it. That being said, if you tell me what's relevant, I can then maybe cull through. There's 100 videos at this murder scene. These 70 are of cops who stood there at the scene, maintaining the scene with their cameras on, but they didn't do anything in terms of interviewing anybody, seeing anything. They were at the perimeter. They were, "Who are you?" checking people in and out. Okay, I may not watch those 70, but these 30 here, I'm going to watch them, and I'm going to have to watch them. But if you'll help me, maybe I can hire people to, meaning I'll look at my assistant, my part-time, my retired cop and go, okay, where do I need to start watching? You need to watch it from minute 16 of the tape to minute 38 of the tape. Great. You just saved me hours. That, to me, is how I see us tackling this long term, having a group of people who we can trust their discretion and cops and people who know what we're looking for to say this is what you got to hone in on. And then our attorneys are going to have to do that. And we'll probably, frankly, do the same for the defense, who's even in less, they're really at a disadvantage because they've got to rely on the state to give them investigators and whatnot. So I'm probably going overboard here.
Well,
but
I guess your answer is really good. In my mind, I was thinking that maybe there's higher expense and higher effort on one side, and maybe it reduces something somewhere else, but
no
maybe
question.
not. Okay, so
all this technology is fantastic, and it makes it for better convictions, more integrity in the system, more faith. I think everybody's going to have that a conviction means what it says. Except all that's great. But I still have to have the human resources to process it and look at it and evaluate it.
Very good. Thank you for the answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Not after that answer, right?
That's a good answer.
Well, Mr. District Attorney, I don't see anyone else with a question, so thank you for that presentation.
Thank you for your patience, and as always, if you have any questions at any point, give me a holler.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that was our last presentation for the day. We did have some time scheduled for discussion if you have any additional questions or things you'd like to talk about. Otherwise, I'd recommend we adjourn for the day.
Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, I think we'll take your advice or your recommendation, and we will adjourn.
Okay, we'll be back here tomorrow at 1:30.
At 1:30, all right, thank you.